What if the NFL had 40 teams? First things first, props to Animal Football for producing a video on this topic before me, so make sure to go watch his video after this. Let's start this video in America to make it simple, but in my next section, I will be talking about NFL expansion outside of the country. Also, I think Animal Football chose a very good number at 40 teams because in professional sports, I believe it is the largest numbers of possible teams you could have participating, while teams of every fan base still believe that it's possibly their year to win it all, as in win the Super Bowl, not just make the playoffs. Also, we will have 16 teams in the playoffs now. Bye weeks suck in postseason play. The first thing that has to happen is we have to move the Jets and Chargers out of New York and LA. This will not happen in real life, but it gives me more of an opportunity to talk about more locations to put teams because then we have 10 more markets to work with instead of just 8. Also, I only chose to disregard the Chargers and Jets over the Rams and Giants because the Rams and Giants have been in the cities longer. I really like the Chargers branding more so than the Rams, so I would prefer them. But I'm sorry, Jets fans, I'm legally not allowed to say anything nice about you as I'm a Bills fan. And it also offers me the platform to really ask the question of what is the most important aspect of sports. If it is not to bring people from the same city together,
what is it?
I understand that if you split the metro population of New York City in half, then that means the Jets and Giants fan bases individually would each be 11 times the size of the Bills' potential local fan base in Buffalo. But I just can't get over the idea that I think sports are supposed to bring local people together, and putting teams too close together is bad for uniting a city if they play in the same league. I went to Florida State University, and every year FBS teams play FCS teams, which basically means that they're not in the same league. But FSU would never consider putting FAMU, an FCS school also located in Tallahassee, Florida, on their schedule because no one who is a fan of either school wants to have a reason to root against the other school. FSU fans are happy for FAMU when they do well and vice versa in football. Anyways, that gets to our potential cities. The cities listed attempt to avoid placing an NFL team in a city that already has an NFL team close by or a Power 4 college football program really close. And these cities also have a metro population near 500,000 people or well above that. They're listed alphabetically, so here are the 17 potential cities I thought had a reasonable chance given my criteria. I did also look at how many pro sports teams these cities already had, but I felt that that really had no impact if they weren't related to football. Also, if you think the NFL cares about how far players travel, you're wrong. They just played a game in Brazil last year, and I think that that pretty much proves, along with all the other international games they've played, that they're not terribly concerned with travel, and I don't think they should be. First city, Albany, New York. Second, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Third, Birmingham, Alabama. Fourth, Cape Coral, Florida. Fifth, Charleston, South Carolina. Sixth, Des Moines, Iowa. Seventh, El Paso, Texas. Eighth, Honolulu, Hawaii. Ninth, Little Rock, Arkansas. 10th, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. 11th, Portland, Oregon. 12th, Raleigh, North Carolina. 13th, Reno, Nevada. 14th, Salt Lake City, Utah. 15th, San Antonio, Texas. 16th, St. Louis, Missouri. And 17th, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Honolulu is the first city I would choose to join the league because they don't even have any options for pro or major college teams at all. Plus, they have a supply of over 1 million people. And Las Vegas showed us vacation markets bring in tons of money for the NFL. Second is another relatively common vacation market for people, and that's Virginia Beach, Virginia. It's another great vacation destination and meets all the criteria very well. Third are two cities tied that are starved for sports in terms of football because they have to go so far for any sort of major football, but they have good-sized populations. And that's Albuquerque, New Mexico, and El Paso, Texas. And even putting both those cities in at the same time, neither are as close together as you may think. Fifth, St. Louis, Missouri needs their team back. It's too big of a city not to have a team nearby. Sixth, San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio's only a little bit down the list because of the fact that the Longhorns are relatively close. But we all know there's plenty of love for football in Texas, so they were guaranteed to be on this list, and I'm not actually concerned adding a team there. Seventh, a tie between three cities that almost everybody probably guaranteed would be on this list, given how large they are and the fact that they don't have NFL teams is pretty surprising. That's Portland, Oregon, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and Salt Lake City, Utah. I don't think there's much to add on those because I don't think they're surprising. But the surprise of this whole list at number 10 is actually Little Rock, Arkansas. It has a pretty decent population size, but it probably is the smallest population you could have for a city that hosts an NFL team. But it has no major football anywhere nearby it, and we know the Southeast actually loves football. The reason the other cities couldn't be chosen, starting with Albany, Birmingham, and Cape Coral, is just because they were too close to NFL teams. Charleston and Des Moines were small cities, but weren't starved for football by distance, so that was the issue. Raleigh doesn't have any major NFL football nearby, but the Research Triangle there just gives way too many opportunities to go enjoy sports, including football. And Reno was the only city, the last city that I listed, that I think was just too small to actually give a team, even though I'm really interested in the idea of that market. Those are the cities that would actually be the best options for new teams in spring leagues too, like the UFL, because I can't believe that there's people trying to put semi-pro teams in saturated markets like New York City or LA, as if that makes more sense than going to an unsaturated market like Little Rock, Arkansas. But what if the league expanded internationally? If we expand internationally, it probably doesn't make any sense for any of the 10 new teams to be in the States. We have plenty of teams in the United States already, but could 10 teams truly make this a worldwide sport? The simple answer is no, so we need to find a way beyond just 10 teams playing home games internationally to expand the sport more at the US level and the worldwide level. Remember how the Jaguars play one game a year in London? Well, what if every team did that? Not in London, but in a different market. First, the NFL needs to expand to 18 games in the regular season, so every team still plays their 8 true home games each year that we've come to expect with a 16-game or a 17-game season. Then, we need to identify the 10 markets that need our new teams internationally, and then we need to identify one market that each team will classify as a secondary market. Because right now, the NFL's secondary market stuff is pathetic. They call it the NFL Global Markets Program, and it doesn't make any sense. If you look at what they have, Mexico has 10 teams claiming its territory, Austria has 6 teams claiming its territory, Germany has 10 teams claiming its territory, and the United Kingdom has 7 teams somewhat claiming its territory. While the Rams are doing something crazy and potentially claiming the populations of China, Japan, and South Korea all to themselves. How does that make any sense? Apologies to the Saints, as they're the only team I feel any bit bad about changing the secondary market stuff the NFL currently has, because their secondary market that they claim sole ownership to is France, and it feels a little bit messed up that I'm taking it from them in my new system. We will split the teams into conferences. The first conference will play all their home games inside the United States. That means they will be a part of the American Football Conference. And the National Football Conference will have the teams that play any of their home games outside the US, including secondary markets. If we expand the league internationally, we are forced to prioritize cities with the largest populations first and foremost, but then we'll look at markets that also have had success with NFL games taking place there so far. And then we'll try to put other great cities that weren't able to get a team as secondary markets. So the 10 cities that are getting teams internationally: first, Tokyo, Japan; second, Delhi, India; third, Shanghai, China; fourth, Sao Paulo, Brazil; fifth, Mexico City, Mexico; sixth, Cairo, Egypt; seventh, Seoul, South Korea; eighth, London, England, going back to games already being played there; ninth, Berlin, Germany, also have seen games played in Germany; and 10th, maybe a little bit surprisingly, but I felt it evil if we didn't put a team in Canada, Montreal, Canada gets a team. So, the NFC will be made up of those 10 teams as well as 10 current NFL teams. The current NFL teams that will be either joining the NFC or continuing to play in the NFC are the Buffalo Bills, the Seattle Seahawks, the Denver Broncos, the Detroit Lions, the Miami Dolphins, the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Minnesota Vikings, the New York Giants, and the Philadelphia Eagles. That means that every other team not mentioned so far will either become an AFC team or remain an AFC team. So, the first division we have to go to start revealing secondary markets for teams is the NFC Canada. The Buffalo Bills secondary market will be Toronto, Canada, as they have, for a decent period of time, had the Toronto series, where they played one home game a year in Toronto, but it's been over 10 years since they've done it. And actually, as a Bills fan, I love the idea of having people in Toronto be a part of our fan base as well. The Seattle Seahawks will have their secondary market be Vancouver, Canada, traveling across the border in Vancouver. The next team will be the Denver Broncos, who will head up to Calgary, Canada for the secondary market game each year. The Detroit Lions will head up to Winnipeg, Canada for their secondary market game each year. And since Montreal already has a team, is actually giving Montreal Paris, France as their secondary market. It's a large secondary market since their primary market isn't terribly large, but it has that French connection to it. The next NFC conference will be the NFC South. The NFC South is made up of a lot of the new teams. First, the team in Sao Paulo, Brazil will have their secondary market be Buenos Aires, Argentina. It felt kind of sad not to be able to put a team in Buenos Aires, Argentina, since it is such a large population. But since Sao Paulo has a team, if we make Buenos Aires their secondary market, that means that we can kind of unite all of South America to the one team. Next, Mexico City's secondary market will be Madrid, Spain, kind of connected through the idea that it's both Spanish-speaking countries. Next, Miami will play their secondary market games in Havana, Cuba. Delhi, India will actually play their secondary market games in Singapore. As I've seen, that's a beautiful city, and I feel like it's a great secondary market for a team that already has such a large primary market. Cairo, the team in Egypt, will play their secondary market games in Dubai. And I think plenty of people have seen how crazy Dubai is as a city, and playing a game there each year would be cool. Next, we have the NFC Europe. First team in it is the Baltimore Ravens. Their secondary market is going to be Dublin, Ireland, combined with Glasgow, Scotland. And that's because the Ravens' name came from the poem The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe's heritage seems to be from Irish and Scottish descent, which makes me think that those would be good secondary markets for the Ravens. Next, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ravens-Steelers rivalry is staying in the same division. Their secondary market is actually going to be Rome, Italy, because of the fact that back in the day, one of the most famous players in Steelers history, Franco Harris, the nickname that they always hung up on the side for the fans of the Steelers that were supporting Franco Harris was Franco's Italian army. So it feels like they could be connected to Italy. Next, in the NFC Europe, we have the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings secondary market will actually kind of be 3 cities combined, as I felt like since the Vikings name is a part of their team, they really should have all of the areas that are connected to Vikings history. So they get Stockholm, Sweden, Copenhagen, Denmark, and Oslo, Norway. We have the London, England team in the NFC Europe. Their secondary markets will be Brussels, Belgium. It's a relatively wealthy place, and it's pretty close together with London. Next, the last team in the NFC Europe will obviously be the German team from Berlin. Their secondary market will be Warsaw, Poland. It felt like we needed to have a secondary market a little bit east to allow some fans in other areas close to there to be able to access it, but it's also still only one country over from Germany. The next division is the NFC Metro. The first team to talk about is from Seoul, South Korea. Their secondary market is actually going to be Sydney, Australia. And that connects well to the next team we have in the division, which is Tokyo, Japan team, which is going to get a secondary market of Auckland, New Zealand, to kind of connect these teams and create a good rivalry in their local markets as well as their secondary markets. The next team to talk about in this division is the team from Shanghai, China, whose secondary market will simply be in-country in Beijing, China, because of how many people live in China. Next, the last 2 teams will keep the Giants-Eagles rivalry in this division, and their secondary markets will be Vienna, Austria for the Giants, as it felt like Austria really needed a team. With the important historical relevance of Philadelphia, I felt a good, important historical city to make a part of the Philadelphia Eagles to connect to the Eagles would be Athens, Greece. We're finally to the American Football Conference, and this is probably where it starts to get a little surprising for people. All of these primary markets stay in the United States, and the secondary markets also stay in the United States. So, making up the AFC West now, we start with the San Francisco 49ers. Since we already moved the Seattle secondary market to Vancouver, Canada, San Francisco ends up being the best market to connect to Portland, Oregon as their secondary market. The Las Vegas Raiders grab Salt Lake City as their secondary market. Los Angeles, the Rams, end up taking Honolulu, Hawaii as their best secondary market option. And the Arizona Cardinals take Albuquerque, New Mexico as their secondary market. Probably the most surprising team in the AFC West, though, is the Green Bay Packers. And that's because when we were looking at the teams we had left for the teams that are west, really, there's not teams that are that far west. Green Bay's fairly far west, but also, more importantly, their secondary market's going to be very far west. Since the Packers are known as the frozen tundra, I felt that they were the best team to make their secondary market just greater Alaska, with most of their games probably occurring in Anchorage as their secondary market. The AFC Southeast is basically just the old NFC South with the Jacksonville Jaguars added to it, but the New Orleans Saints' new secondary market is going to be greater Mississippi. That Louisiana-Mississippi connection right there on the coast down there feels like you really should connect those states if Mississippi doesn't have their own team. And I think the primary location the Saints would play their secondary market games out of would be Starkville, Mississippi. So hopefully Brandon Walker's happy with me for that. The Jacksonville Jaguars secondary location, probably a little bit surprisingly, but I felt it important to give them a unique location since they can't use London, England anymore since London got their own team. They play their secondary market games in San Juan, Puerto Rico now. So they're in the United States still, but potentially one of the most unique American secondary markets. The Atlanta Falcons simply grab the greater Alabama region, as there's no team claiming Alabama right now, but probably play most of their games out of Birmingham for their secondary market. Tampa Bay heads down to Cape Coral, Florida, because of the fact that I said that that's a market that I actually think is a really interesting one for teams to play in, and it allows them to control a greater portion of Florida. The Carolina Panthers really have a simple explanation to theirs. They're playing all of their games in Charlotte, but they claim all of Carolina. So their secondary region is still just the greater Carolina region. I already talked about how I'm interested in Raleigh as a secondary market, but also Columbia and Charleston could have games played there, as well as Boone. If I had to select one city, though, I would go with Charleston as their secondary market mainly. Next, we have the AFC Midwest. This is the Chicago Bears, Kansas City Chiefs, Indianapolis Colts, Cleveland Browns, and Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are obviously known for kind of being a little tight with their money, so I thought it made sense to not make them travel far at all for their secondary market, and they grabbed Louisville, Kentucky as their secondary market. Somebody needs to claim Columbus, Ohio as their secondary market, playing at the world-famous Ohio State Buckeye Stadium. I think the Cleveland Browns fit in well there. Next, St. Louis still doesn't have a team in this scenario, so the Indianapolis Colts grab it as their secondary market, as it's maybe closer than you think. The Kansas City Chiefs grab Oklahoma City, Oklahoma as their secondary market, and the Chicago Bears grab Des Moines, Iowa. Finally, we have the last division in the AFC, which we're just going to call the AFC Big for what you'll hear about. First, we have the two teams in Texas, so everything's bigger in Texas. The Dallas Cowboys will play their secondary market games in Little Rock, Arkansas, as Jerry Jones is connected to Arkansas through going to the University of Arkansas. The Houston Texans will have West and South Texas as their secondary markets, and that includes San Antonio as well as Lubbock and El Paso as their secondary markets. The New England Patriots, just because of their name being all of New England, grab the greater New England regions, and I like the idea of them playing a rotational secondary location schedule between Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Next, we have the Washington Commanders, whose secondary location will be Virginia Beach, Virginia. As I mentioned, I'd love to see football played in that city. I think it's a great spot. And finally, the last team, the Tennessee Titans, will play their secondary market games in Memphis. They could even play some games in Knoxville, maybe every 4 years. As Tennessee, they get the entire greater Tennessee area. If you haven't seen this video, I think you'll enjoy it.
So, if you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching. 2020 president candidate.